Welcome to the Hemophilia Council of California's Advocacy and Policy webinar. This is our virtual Legislative Day 2021 virtual advocacy primer. So we are going to jump over to the issues, and I want you guys to see that I know that this is going to be a little bit small on the screen, but I just threw it up here as a reference point. So those that are participating in the Legislative Day meetings on Wednesday should have received a packet from us in the two ways. You should have received a packet in the mail of physical copies of the documents, and you should have also received an electronic version of the documents via email. Knowing that people are comfortable with having the information in front of them in different ways, we provided the information to you both ways. So you should have the information in front of in both ways. And the sheet that you're looking at is the same sheet. It's basically the leave behind sheet that is going to summarize the issues, and we're going to send a copy to the legislators when we meet with them. The nice thing, the great thing about Randy's tip with the photo album is that in the photo album is a great little thing to take with you in the meeting so that you kind of have your talking points. One of the nice things about Zoom is you can have your papers with your talking points and your issues on them and kind of prop them up on the computer screen next to you. And you can be reading along on your talking points documents, and nobody necessarily even needs to know that you have papers in front of you. So that's kind of a silver lining of the fact that we're on Zoom. So you can have these notes in front of you while you're talking to your legislators. So I'm going to jump over and we're going to look at the issues this way so it's a little bit easier to read. Our number one issue this year, as it usually is to maintain eligibility and benefits for the California Children's Services and the Genetically Handicapped Persons Programs, so CCS and GHPP. Randy mentioned a little bit about CCS, and that is a way that she got really involved in advocacy in Ohio in the Ohio version of the CCS program. These programs provide healthcare coverage to people with hemophilia and other rare bleeding disorders in California, and the coverage includes factor, ancillary medical supplies, physical therapy, and other needed medical procedures. Basically, CCS is the program for children up to age 21, and GHPP covers adults 21 and older. So thankfully, this year in the governor's proposed budget, these programs are fully funded. So what we want to do is we want to say thank you to the legislators for continuing to fund these programs, and just ask that they continue to support that full funding as the final budget is negotiated. And one way that you can tie this into your personal story is those members of your group. You won't be, we're not sending anyone into these meetings by themselves. You're all in groups, and you already know who your groups are. So most likely at least one person in your group has probably a personal connection with CCS or GHPP. And so the folks in the folks in your groups can help that have been on CCS or GHPP can maybe take the lead on this particular issue. So we did get a question pop up in terms of the statistics about how many people have bleeding disorders in the state of California. So we have around 4,000 people with hemophilia in California. Von Willebrand's, we know that about 1% of the population has von Willebrand. So given that there are nearly 40 million people in California, that would mean about 400,000 people with von Willebrand's most likely, although we know, of course, that von Willebrand's is underdiagnosed. So there are not 400,000 people probably diagnosed in California, but there certainly are probably that many people impacted. So those are like broad numbers. I do not have the breakdown off the top of my head of how many of those would be adults versus children, but I can say that I think that it is about, you know, let me see if I can, while Liz is presenting on the bill, I can probably look up the statistics of how many of them are, how many people with bleeding disorders we have on CCS and GHPP. Because I want to double check my memory bank on that one. I have a number in my head, but I want to make sure it's correct. So the second issue that we're going to cover is related to a new program that the state of California is rolling out, which is called Medi-Cal RX. And originally it was supposed to start in January of this year. And first because of COVID-19, and then because Magellan Medicaid, which is the company that the state has hired to be the contractor on this issue, has recently been bought out by another company that has some conflicts of interest that need to be resolved. It has been put, the launch of this program has been delayed. But in short, Medi-Cal RX is going to mean that all prescription drugs that are purchased for people on public pay programs in California, so those that are on Medi-Cal or GHP or CCS, are all purchased through this Medi-Cal RX program instead of through, say, like an HMO through Medi-Cal, that type of a service. And so our main priority, and this is the summary statement that you need to have, you know, that you kind of want at your fingertips when you're talking to legislators, is that we are just focused on making sure that patients continue to have timely access to important medications like Factor and then their ancillary supplies when Medi-Cal RX program is established. The council has had very productive meetings with the state on this issue, and we expect the transition to be smooth, but we want to go ahead and remind legislators that it's really important that everything continues to happen in a timely manner when this transition occurs. And again, I just want to remind folks, if you have questions on these issues, please feel free to, you know, pop your hand up or put a question in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. And then the third issue is in regards to telemedicine or telehealth. I'm guessing that many of you who perhaps hadn't been exposed to telehealth before COVID-19 probably have had a telehealth visit since. I know that I had never used telehealth before, but during COVID, I have used telehealth, even just with my primary care doctor. And so one of the issues that the council is supporting this year is maintaining flexibilities for patients after the pandemic ends, so that we can continue to use telehealth as part of our means of getting treatments, both with our hemophilia treatment centers as well as just care more broadly. So we are supporting efforts. There's an effort as part of the budget process, as well as several bills that are going through the legislature right now. And in a broad sense, we want to encourage legislators to support efforts to make sure that there are flexibilities in place that make telehealth available to patients and the providers, so that those flexibilities can continue. And then the fourth issue is AB 752, which is Nazarian, and this is the Patient Choice and Transparency Act. And I am going to turn this over to Liz Helms. Liz is the CEO of the California Chronic Care Coalition, and Liz and the Chronic Care Coalition are wonderful partners of the council. We work on a lot of health policy issues together, and we really appreciate her partnership in helping to really fight for patient access and quality healthcare for patients. And so, Liz, I'm going to let you take it over and talk about our bill.
Thank you. Do you want to move the next slide forward? So, Thank you so much, Lynn, for asking us to come and present on our bill today. And sitting here listening to Randy brought back so many memories to me, because so many of us come into advocacy because of personal experiences in our lives. And actually, the best advocates can tell their story in a way that no one else can. And it can change things, move things, and make things happen. So everybody's voice counts. So kudos to you, Randy, for the great work you've done in Ohio and for sharing your story and your booklet. I thought your booklet was really cool. So we've been working with McKesson and Cover My Meds for over 2 years, looking at a new technology that came forward that really is a game changer in healthcare and is really going to help consumers get more information at the point of care. So AB 752 is actually going to be heard tomorrow in committee, in the Assembly Health Committee, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But how many of you have actually gone to the pharmacy counter and went to purchase your medicine, and all of a sudden find out it's expensive, you don't have the amount that you need to pay for it that day, or there's a prior auth attached to it, so now you've got to wait until the pharmacist gets back to the doctor gets back to the pharmacist, they get back to the health plan. So you've got utilization barriers in managing your care. And so what this bill does, so you're taking that information that the pharmacist can see, and now you're putting that into workflow upstream into your physician's office. So now your physician or your provider in his office or her office can see that information. And now you can have a different kind of conversation. That conversation could be, what's the best medicine for me? How much does it cost? Is there a prior authorization? Do I have to go through step therapy? All these things now are going to be at the physician's level, where you have more opportunities to have a discussion. And when you now leave your doctor's office, you're going to know what the medicine costs, and that you can go and get it at the pharmacy or through your mail order, or whatever ways you utilize obtaining your medicines. This is a game changer, because so many people leave the pharmacy counter, they don't get their meds, or they don't have a great understanding of whether or not they can. So many people cut their medicines in half, that things that you shouldn't be doing. But now you're going to know, because that conversation is going to change. And it doesn't have anything to do with a comprehensive medication management discussion with a pharmacist. That's actually what we're hoping, is that when this is implemented, the pharmacist will have more time to actually sit down and go over all your meds with you in a different way than they do now. Not just a consult, but actually more of an in-depth conversation. So this bill is going to be heard tomorrow in Assembly Health. We took a lot of amendments on it. It is being opposed by the health plans. And some of their feedback has been, we already have that. Well, yes, we have worked very hard over the years on formulary transparency. So you can go to a website, you can get your formulary from your plan. Your doctors can also get that formulary. However, it's really cumbersome. It takes a lot of time. Every plan has a different formulary and a different way to access it. And so that's not viable. The doctor needs to be sitting there talking with you about your care or your family's care. And so this is called the real-time benefit tool. It is a portal that they can go into, and now they're gonna be able to see everything. It's gonna streamline it. It's gonna make it much simpler, and it's gonna be a real benefit for people to access the affordable quality healthcare that they need. And I'm just showing you some of the support that we have. Our list is growing every day, and so I think by next week we're gonna have over 30 organizations that have come on to support it. We're pretty positive it's going to get through, but we always have a positive attitude before we go into committee. And you never know what's going to happen when you're in committee, even though our committee in committee is actually virtual. So that creates another whole challenge. But we do want you to call in, and me too. I think what the next slide might show. Are we looking at the video now? We're going to try to play this video and keep our fingers crossed that it comes out. And you may just need to click on it.
Bear with us for 1 second. I know I put the link in here, but it's not wanting to let me play it now.
If we can't play it, it's okay.
Yeah, it looks like the link. It looks like the link got taken out somehow. I don't know what happened there. Apologies.
It's totally fine. I'll send it to you, and you can share the link with everyone.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. This is Assemblymember Nasarian. He's our author. And what we did is we actually went to one of the pharmacists locally in Sacramento and had quite a discussion, because we wanted to know what was really happening with them. And for the pharmacist that's in this video actually came to tears, because so many people leave the pharmacy counter when they have very, very large out-of-pocket costs. And also, when people leave, if they have filled a prescription, what happens to that prescription? Well, you can open up the drawer at the pharmacy, and all of a sudden you've got all these medicines sitting in the drawer, and maybe they're going to come back and get them, and maybe they're not. But if they don't come back, they can't just put them back on on the shelf, because the bottle's been opened, and so they have to wait for it to expire. So that's a huge cost to the system, and we're estimating that over $200 billion are lost each year because of the broken way our system has been working. So tomorrow we are going to be giving our testimony, and here's the information for you to call in. We are so delighted and thankful that the Hemophilia Council has taken our bill as one of their major issues. And we know your voice is really, really going to be important. Now, let's say tomorrow it passes through committee and it's going to go on somewhere else. Well, for everyone that's in the health committee and any of those calls that you're on, it would be great for you to say thank you to them. Thank you for supporting the bill and getting it out of committee, and then why this could really work for you. And so we could use your support with the Me Too tomorrow. There's your toll-free number. And then any other questions that we have. Are there questions that have come in?
Yes. So I did see one question pop into the chat. Is this bill going to be opposed by physician groups because they might feel that there's extra time to determine the cost of the meds?
They're actually supporting. So we have right now 4 physician groups that are supporting: the rheumatologists, family physicians, the cardiologists, and one other. Oh boy, it was a new one that just came in. Rheumatologists, cardiologists, family physicians. We're also working with CMA and have had great conversations. This is going to help them. I mean, think about all the step therapy and all the prior authorization forms that their offices have to fill out now. So if they have the opportunity to go into this and look at it, this is not a mandate on them. They don't have to do it. And there's also no cost to them for doing it. So there's just benefit from it. And let's say they hand it off to someone. They know their patient's coming in and they say, okay, well, let's look up their formulary and give me the list or whatever. So it's going to actually streamline the whole process and save time.
Awesome. So are there any other questions for Liz about AB 752? What we'll do is we will pop together a quick email after the webinar is over today with the video link and this information about the bill hearing tomorrow. And we can send that out to everyone. So if you were interested in calling in tomorrow and you haven't gotten the number scribbled down or whatever, don't worry about that. We'll send a quick follow-up email with the video link and this call-in information. And you already have kind of our copies of our letter of support, because that's part of our leave behind packet. So you can always, you don't get to say in those hearings when you're calling in for what we say a me too. You basically just get to call in and you say your name and that you're calling in support of AB 752. So you don't have to worry about a bunch of other words or explanation that you need to give. That's awesome. So if there are no other questions on that, maybe Liz, if you can just stay on with us for a few more minutes, we're going to move on and just go over some of the logistics and kind of final advice for their meetings tomorrow. But if anyone still has a question, they can pop them in and I'll come back to you real quick if something comes up.
And Lynn, you just brought something up that I might just quickly add.
Yeah.
Is when if they're sitting on the phone waiting to do a me too, and they're watching it on screen, there's a time lapse between what you're hearing and what you're seeing. So sometimes you don't want to look at your screen right then and there, because they will be ahead of the phone. I think will probably be ahead of what you're watching. And so, yeah, you for sure your phone is going to be you're on time in real time.
Yeah, and then we did just get a question pop in, says, so in this case, the patients will be able to ask the doctor for other options for treatment before they get the prescription. And that is exactly right. That's the whole idea of the bill, right, Liz, is basically
absolutely
that
it
you'll be
that doctor-patient relationship. It gives the consumer, the patient, puts them back in the driving seat where they can have that conversation and they'll have a lot more say in their own healthcare.
Really, and saving both the doctor and the patient time, because rather than having to have one doctor's appointment, go to the pharmacy, find out that your prescription costs more than you can afford, and then having to go back to your doctor to say, hey, is there another option? You can have that in one meeting where your doctor pulls it up and he says, well, it looks like it's going to cost you, I'm just going to throw a random number out. It's going to cost $100 a month for this drug for you. And you can say, well, there's just no way I'm going to be able to sustain that. I'm not going to be able to do that. And then you can have that conversation with your doctor about, well, are there any other options? Right. So that's
absolutely.
The idea.
Absolutely. And it's going to be added to Medi-Cal. So that's already happened. So we want the plans, the private plans, to actually get in there and get involved in the HMOs.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Liz, for joining us, and thank you for the Chronic Care Coalition's work on this bill and so many other bills that we see and that we work on together to help patients. We really appreciate that. I want to thank our sponsors of Future Leaders and Legislative Day, Takeda BioMarin, HF Healthcare, Sanofi Genzyme, the National Hemophilia Foundation, Every Life Foundation, and Solio Health, as well as our public policy and advocacy webinar series sponsors, Takeda, BioMarin, HF Healthcare, and Sanofi Genzyme. They've all helped make this possible today. So thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.